Okay, good evening everyone. Shalom Aleichem, Baruch Haba. We're continuing in Daf Hashavua, Daf Nun Tes Amud Beis. We're continuing in the sugya of Gidulim. According to the Ran, the shaila is, are Gidulim a separate entity, and therefore they're mutter, and therefore they're mevatel the ikar, or are they continuation of the ikar, and therefore they're asr, and then obviously they're not mevatel the ikar. And we had various opinions. We had the opinion of Rabbi Yanai, Batzel, Shel Truma, V'Rabu, Gidulav, Alikari, Mutter, Anon Zayin Beis. And then we had two opinions that it's Aser, Rabbi Yochanan, Yolda, Shesivcha, Bezakena, Afapi, Shoisifa Masayim, Aser, it's not Mevatel, it's still Arla. And we had the shita of Amar Shmuel Bar Nachmani Amar Rabbi Yonasan Batzel Shanatai Bekerem V'Nekar Hakerem Aser. So even though what grew after was mutter, it's not mevatel the ikar. So we have a question about Gidulin. Yeah, that's the sugya that we are in, and we also have the opinion of Rabbah. What was Rabbah's opinion? Let's see. Rabbi Yochanan said if you have a measurement of bitzalim that you took off meiser and then you planted it, you have to take off meiser off the whole thing. So Rabbah was analyzing this, and he said, Rabbah was sitting in front of Rabbi Chizda, and he taught this halacha that you have to take off misaseres lefi kula, and Rabbi Chizda said, no one's going to pay attention to that halacha. No one's going to pay attention to halacha of your Rebbe, because I understand that you could be mavatel a davar aser, fine, but the heter, if let's say you have new produce that requires meiser, it will reckon it like you never gave meiser off the ikar. Meiser you give lefi cheshbain, the way the Ran explained it. Something which is aser doesn't disappear in heter. It doesn't give taste anymore. It's there, but you're allowed to eat it because it doesn't give taste, but it's there. We don't ignore its reality. So if we don't ignore its reality, then why would you be able to give meiser lefi kula? L'chayr, you should only be able to give meiser. You should only have to give meiser on what grew. So Amar Lei, so Rabbi said no. Miloi tnan dechavasei. Didn't we learn something similar to this? Namely, bitzalim sheyardu aleim geshamim. Bitzalim, that rain fell on it, and vitzimchu, and it grew. This is talking about onions of the 6th year. Im hayu alen shelahen shiurim asurim. If the leaves are black, which indicates that they're yoinek from the ground, the shemitah year, they're asur. Hayriku, but if they're white or sallow or green, mutarin, they're permitted. But if the leaves are black, why are they asur? If the leaves are black, why are they asur? Let's think about that for a moment. It grew in the 6th year. These are leaves from the 6th year. And then it was planted in the 7th year. And the leaves are black, which indicates that it nourished from the ground. So now, it grew in the Shemitah year. But why is it asur? Lema, heter shebehen leichan halach. Why don't we say the same thing? Where did the heter go? So meaning, of course, whatever grew now in the 7th year is asur, but whatever grew before is mutter. Now, how are you going to slice that? Okay, I guess you sell it, and you should be able to benefit from the value of what was there before. Let's see the Ran. Im hayu alen shalahem shchayren umidik tani stama asurin mashna shasurin lefi kulan. Smashma, it's entirely aser. Kepero shvius atzman, like the fruit of Shemitah itself. Ve'im isa, and if there is a halacha that we cannot disregard, if it is correct, if your argument is correct that heteron lehechan asa, where did it go? Ve'im isa da'arminon v'chi heter shon lehechan halach, meaning that the reality of something which is mutter cannot disappear. So what happened to the reality of the fact that the ikr is from the 6th year? Lehavale lamifsak, the listening asurin, the ein toivsin demeim kishvias atzma. It's not like it's toifes the money like shvias itself. Whatever grew in the 6th year is not asur. The original part should be mutter. Now it's not like you could eat it. There's no way you could eat it because we can't isolate what grew in the 6th year from what grew in the 7th year. It's one plant. So, but the Isser Shemitah could be here, let's see. Here, look in the ein toifsin demand kishvias atzma. It's not like the heter will be toifes onto money like Shemitah itself. Shareim hichlef keneged heter shebehen einoi toifes damav. If you're going to exchange the Shemitah onto money, it's not going to hold on like Shemitah itself. Elavadai gidulin mevatli leikar legamri. Rather, the gidulin are definitely mavatel, the ikr, completely. It must be if the halacha is that if it's black, it's all asr. That means it makes the original as if it's not there at all. It cancel culture. It makes it like it doesn't exist. Now, why would that be? Because when gidulin grow out of the ikr, it's not just, the gidulin remains the same, and whatever growth there is that comes out of it is just something new coming out of the ikr. The ikr itself is transformed. The logic is, the reason, now we're saying, you know why? If you take off meiser of something and then you replant it and it grows, it's misaseres lefikula, because even the ikr is transformed. It's a new ikr. The ikr becomes a complete panim chadashos. Right, that's the lashon of the man. Lefi sha'af ha'ikar atzmai mishtana derech gedilasai. Now this seems like the Chazon Ish's limud, Elmo, the Chazon Ish's lamdas, that from here we see, no, it's not a matter of being mavatal the taste. It's the ikar becomes like it's completely revolutionized. It's transformed into a new entity entirely. That's what we're saying. Meaning, when we asked heter shebahen lahechan halach, so Rabbi says back, what do you mean? We've seen this before. This is what happens to the ikar when the leaves turn black, where the ikar is now, the lashon of the Ran is sha'af ha'ikar atzmai mishtane derech gedilase. The ikar itself is transformed when it grows. Okay. So Rav Chizda gives an answer. Rav Chizda says, no, this is not analogous. Amrali misavrid al ikar katani. Do you think when it says it's aser, it means the ikar is aser? Atoisefes katani aser. It means whatever grows after is aser. Whatever grows after is aser. But the ikar is not aser. The toisefes is aser. Says the Gemara, Ihachi my asa Rabbi Shimon Gamliel l'meimar. Then, if that's the case, what's Rabbi Shimon Gamliel saying? The Tanya of Shimon Gamliel Omer. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel in a brisa says as follows: Hagadol b'chiyuv chayev. That whatever grows in what's obligated in biur is chayev. Whatever grows in the 7th year and is subject to the mitzvah of biur is chayiv in biur. Hagadol b'ptur ptur. and whatever grows in the 6th year and is not chayiv in beer, is not chayiv. In other words, Rav Shimon Gamliel says that if it's shiurim, then what grows in the 7th year is aser, and what grows in the 6th year is mutter. So you can't say that's what the Tana Kama means, because then how is Rav Shimon Gamliel any different? Basically, Rabbi says, no, I could prove that Tana Kama holds the whole thing is aser, because if it's not entirely aser, then the Tana Kama and Rav Shimon Gamliel are saying the exact same thing. To which Rav Chizda says, no, kulam asis, Rav Shimon Gamliel katani la. No, maybe you're right. Maybe Rav Shimon Gamliel is just explaining what he said in the Reisha. In other words, it's all the shita of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. Okay. So right now, Rabbah does not have a proof that to his din that misaseres lefi kula, that the heter is completely transformed. You can't bring a raya from this Mishnah because it could be only the ikr is aser. I'm sorry, it could be only the toisefes is aser. The ikr is taka mutter because it grew in the 6th year. We don't have any raya to Rabbah's din that the ikr is completely removed and transformed into something entirely new. Okay, so let's see the Ran. No Ran. So what are we saying now? The Gemara makes a very interesting point. V'adkan lo sham elei lo Shim Gamliel deloi katarach, aval heicha de katarach batel beruva. Now, this means as follows. Rabbah was hoping that you could bring a raya from the Mishnah to his din. How? Because Rabbah holds the ikr is completely transformed. And it seems like the Tana Kama holds that if the leaves are black, then even the ikr is aser and is completely transformed. But we said, no, maybe the whole Mishnah is Rav Shimon Gamliel, who holds that only the gidulim are aser. So now Rabbah is going to say back, even so, it could be, even if you hold in general, the ikr is completely transformed, there's a reason why, in this case, the ikr is not transformed. You know why? You know why in this case the ikr is not transformed? Because it happened mamela. What happened? You had a batzel from the 6th year, and then rain fell on it, and then it was planted in the 7th year. So basically there was onions planted in the 6th year, and you left it in the ground, and rain fell. So maybe only then we say that the whole thing becomes, maybe only then we say only the gidulin are aser. You know why? You didn't do anything to be mavatal the ikr. It just happened mamela. There was no maisa that was done. When does Rav Shimon Gamliel say that the gidulin are not mavatal the ikr? That's if you didn't do any tircha to be mavatal it. Aval heicha de katarach. But if you were matriach, namely, in which case were your matriach bitzalim shetikna, you took maiso of bitzalim and then you planted it. So if you plant it, maybe in that case, then we say it's misasaras lefikula. You know why? Because you did a maisa, and when you do an act, it's mavatalid. Maybe you need to do a tircha to be mavatalid. That's what a Rabbah is arguing now. V'ad kan lo shama le Rav Shimon Gamliel doloi katarach, aval heicha de katarach bato beruba. Let's see the Ran. Where is the Ran? Oh, this is on the fourth narrow line. Va'ad kan lo shama le Rav Shimon Gamliel elahecha doloi tarach kolomer. Even though you can't bring a support to Rabbah from the Mishnah because you could technically learn that only the Gidulin are asar, it's not going to be a question on me if in fact that's how you do learn the Mishnah. It's true, here we'll say the Gidulin are not mevatel the Iker. That's if you were never matriach to be mevatel it. Aval hecha de katarach, but where you're matriach to be mevatel it, ki hacha, like in this case, the litra bitzalim, that a measurement of onions, shazara b'karka they planted in the ground, asu gidulin mevalin ikar lagamri. Meaning, even if you're going to say the whole brayso says Rav Shimon Gamliel and it's not mevatel the ikar, maybe it's not mevatel the ikar because you didn't do any tircha to be mevatel. But if you do a maisa and you're matriach to mevatel it, maybe you would. So Gemara says, whoa, wait a second, wait up. V'chol heicha de katarach bata beruba. Every time you're matriach, it's going to be mevatel. V'harei litra maser tevel de katarach. What about the earlier case? You have a measurement of meiser, tevel, that you didn't take meiser on it, and you were matriach to plant it. So what do we say? The katani, v'oiso litra ma'aser alav mimakam achel lefi cheshbain. So, what was the case over there? You had a measurement on Nun Ches Amud Beis. You had a measurement of Meiser that you did not, of Tevel basically. Let's say you have something you did not take Meiser on, and from the 6th year, and then you planted it in the 7th year, and it grew a lot. So then the halacha is, you only take meiser off of, you don't have to take meiser off of what grew in Shemitah, because Shemitah is pater from meiser, but you do take off meiser from what was grown in the 6th year. But wait a second, in that case, you went ahead and planted it in Shemitah, so you did a maisa. So why doesn't your maisa exempt even what grew in the 6th year, right? You got the case? You have something that grew in the 6th year that you took meiser off, and then you planted it in the 7th year, and it grew a lot, and whatever grew in the 7th year is pater from meiser. So the halach is you take off meiser lefi cheshbon. You only have to take off meiser off the amount that grew in the 6th year. But why? Since you did a meiser, we should say you're mevatel that original amount that you did not take meiser off. V'katani v'oisa litra ma'asal l'makam achel lefi cheshbon. You ready for this answer? Let's see the Ran first. The Ran says, Harei litra maser de katarach, second wide line, de hatarach levtule ikar bezriya. You were machech to mevatel the ikar by planting. Va'afilu hachi katani oisa litra ma'aser alami makamacher lefi cheshbon al ma'afagav de katarach. Even though you were matriach heter sheba loy batal. Heter sheba? I don't know why it says the word heter. Isser, the Rashash says. Baruch Hashem. Isser Sheba. The Isser Tevel in it is not batal. The batal amai katani ma'aser le'ah. If it became batal, why does it say you take meiser of it? Ti batal hi litra legabe gedulei shvius. That litter should become batal. So now the Gemara says a whopper, another whopper. Shani gabe meiser. Meiser is different. The Amar kra aser ta'aser. Take off meiser, you should take off meiser. Is called tvua zarecha. What does that mean? It almost sounds like sometimes you have to take off meiser, even on something that meiser has been taking off of. Okay, so what does that mean? Vehetera zari inchi. Now, when somebody plants something, they plant heter, isuri lo zari inchi. People don't plant iser. So if the pasuk is saying you should take off meiser of something that meiser is already taken, it has to be a tvua that is mutter. But tvua which is aser, you would not take off meiser. So, in other words, really the gedulim is mavatel, but the pasuk is saying, even though technically you should not have to take off meiser, you do take off meiser. Let's see the Ran. There's a special gzeres hakosov here that you would take off meiser. How do we explain this? Let's see if we can figure this out. It says the Ran, Shani gabi meiser da amakra aser ta aser is called tu azarecha de hetera zari inshi heter people plant to isuri loy zari inshi. Iser people don't plant. We're trying to explain why don't we say that which you took off meiser originally, originally you did not take off meiser. It's produce of the 6th year. But the question is, so why don't we say that it's batal? So, Koloima Rachmana Amar, Da'af Zarecha Shezarata Shumasukan Kvar. It's saying that even your seed that you planted, which you already took off meiser, Tachser v'tiaser. You should take off meiser again. Why? Even though you already took off meiser, you should do it again. Why? The batalei ikar legabe gedulin. The gedulin are mevatel the ikar. Now in this case, it's the opposite. We're not taking off meiser again. In this case, on the new gedulin, it's pater from meiser. The shaila is, why are you not? Why is it not mevatel the ikar? So just because the Torah is saying that even something that you took meiser off, do it again, because it's batel to the ikar, which is chayiv and meiser, it says zarecha, which implies dafka de hetera, dafka something of heter. The hachi are chayu de inshi. This is the derech of people. Uvehetera ka'amar, only by heter we say that gidulin are mevatel the ikar. But iser, lav zarecha mikri. Iser is not called your seed. Deloy zari la'inshi, people don't plant it. Hokach mizarecha mashma dibi isura loy asi gidulin umevatlin iser, umevatlin ikar. Only heter is mevatel iser, meaning only heter comes and says, if I have if it's permitted to take off meiser, then I'm going to take off meiser of something that I did already. But if I have produce that I'm not chayiv a meiser, it will not be mevatel. What is chayiv a meiser? Again, let's try to get this clear. The Gemara's question is that if it's true that whenever you do a tircha, it's mevatel the ikr, so then why, if I have the 6th year produce, which was chayiv in meiser, and then I plant in the 7th year, so why is the halacha that I have to take off meiser off that litter? Why don't I say it's batal? After all, I was matriach. Why don't I say that this litter that was planted in the 6th year, which is chayiv in meiser, why don't we say it's pater? And the answer is it's exeres hakasav. You know when I take off meiser? You know when the Torah says that you take off meiser, even though maybe you did already, or even though it's pater? That's only talking about something which is mutter, but not something which is aser. What does that mean? Only something that you replant that is mutter and is not tevel do you take off meiser. But if, let's say you replanted something that's aser, that's chayiv in meiser, you don't take off meiser again. That's not a typical case. Let's give it one more shot. Again, the Ran is saying, Kolaima Rachmana Omar. The merciful one is saying, the Av Zarecha Shezarata Shu Mesukan Kfar, even something that you took off meiser on, Tachser v'tiasar, you're going to do it again. The batal ikr legabi gedulin. The ikr is batal to what grew. Now in this case, we're trying to say that we're going to say the ikr is not batal, and since it was chayiv in meiser, it remains chayiv in meiser. Umi dekas of zarecha mashma dafka dehetera. Only something that was permitted. The hachi archayu the inchi. That's a normal case to plant. Uvehetera ka'amar. If something is mutter, then the Torah says that gidulin are mavatal. But isura, something which is aser, something which is tevel, that's not called zarecha. So therefore, something which is aser, gidulin is not mavatal the ikr. It's exeres hakasav. Something which is aser, gidulin is not mavatal the ikr. Okay. Gufa Amar Rabbi Chanina. Gufa Amar Rabbi Chanina Tirsa Amar Rabbi Yanai. Batzel shel truma shenatu v'rabu gidulav al ikarai mutter. So we had this before. We had this quoted on Nun Zayin Amud Beis that Rabbi Chanina Tirsa said from Rabbi Yanai, an onion of truma that you planted it, and the gidulim are more than the ikr, then the ikr is mutter. Says the Gemara, lememra de gidule heter malin es ha'isr. You're going to say the gidulin is mavatal the isr vatan gidule truma. But we learned that the gidulin of truma is truma itself. Not only is it not mavatal it, the ikr makes the gidulin truma. Let's see the Ran on that. Gufa Amrav Chanina Tersa Amrav Yanai Batzel Shel Truma Va'anan Tnan Gidule Truma Alma Gidule Nimshach Machar Ikar V'arein Kamoisan V'heich Malen. And the rest we're going to see on Daf Samach. But this answer of the Gemara of Truma is different. In other words, the kasha is that when you do a Maisa, it's definitely Mevatel Ikar. So why is it that something which was Chayiv Meiser, and then the majority of it, the Gidulin grew in Shemitah, which is Pater from Meiser, why isn't it Mevatel it? Why don't we say that Why don't we say that we're mevatel the tevel, and therefore you don't have to take off meiser? So the answer is it's a special gzeres hakosov, that by iser we don't say that we're mevatel the ikar. It says aser ta'aser. You only take off meiser
Rabbi?
You only take off meiser on a davar heter. On a davar iser, you don't take off meiser. Why? Because we don't say bittul ha'ikr by a davar aser. So here, which is a davar aser, we don't say bittul.
Rabbi?
Yes.
Is it only the case of Meiser, which is an exception because the Xeris HaKosov of Aser to Aser, and not just the general rule of any time there's Iser?
What's the question? Is it germane to meiser or is it iser?
Recording stopped.
Sorry.